Hello and welcome. It is 6 o'clock. It is Tuesday and it is time for the 6 o'clock club. Hello from me, Andy, Twisted Narrative, and we have this fine fella here that joins me Monday to Wednesday most of the
Me.
time. Yeah, that is you. That
Oh,
is you.
wow. Hello, everybody. Christian here. Just
Enough
here.
said. You don't need to say anything else. We've got Matt in the chat and we've got Kyle in the chat. Hello to both of you. Both of you.
Exciting. A new stretch goal has been added to the Kickstarter now. So
Yeah.
that's really,
Um,
really exciting.
I've kickstarted it as well. I got the email, same as you. Do you wanna just mention what it is?
So I will do, but I'm going to have to bring it up again because I got the email earlier,
Well, you
read it, and
raised
went, that
it.
sounds really.
I haven't got it
Yes, but we're
prepped.
not a professional outfit.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah. No,
Right.
it's adding. So basically more art into the inside of the book. I mean, the art, as you've already mentioned when Matt was on here, the art's amazing.
Yeah,
So I really hope that this stretch goal gets hit because I'd love more of that art, please. Much more of that art. So yes, it's just really exciting,
yeah.
really, really exciting. It's yeah, so good.
So a big thumbs up, Matt. Thanks for the extra stretch. Hopefully we can get it past that point as well. It's all going very very well. I'm chatting to Matt on Thursday as well about the stuff that we're
Ooh,
doing. So
exciting.
it's good times. It is indeed good times. And Kyle's in chat as well. And I just want to do a quick shout out to you, Kyle, and say, message me if you want to be in any of these games. Don't be shy about it. I know that you've kind of subtly mentioned it. You are more than welcome. The games kind of, fill up mainly because we are minimizing the numbers of players so that when we stream it, we don't get a lot of players that are sort of talking over each other. It just controls the flow for the viewer a little with 3 to 4 sort of players. But you are definitely welcome. Definitely welcome. So don't be shy about it. Just message me if there is anything that you catches your attention, and we'll try and get that sorted out for you. You're a great player. It would be an honour to have you playing on the stream. Um, so yeah, I did the miracle thing last night. I was in 2 places at the same time.
How
Uh,
did you achieve that?
it's called scheduling, a little thing that YouTube allows me to do. um, so yeah, I like video games. Are they called video games still? Computer
I'm not
games?
I'm not the person to ask.
I
I
don't know.
mean,
Anyway, I like.
like I know what the current lingo is.
And I decided to do. There's a new early access survival game that I like survival games very very much called Sons of the Forest. What I decided was I'd record myself as a playthrough, but rather than just me kind of being me, I decided to do it as one of my favourite NPCs, non-player characters, which is Captain Dove, and I wasn't sure whether it would be workable or whatever. But it seems Christian enjoyed watching it last night,
I
and
did,
I
yes.
paid him.
And Kyle's mentioned my favourite bit as well.
Right. So there is more of that. It is scheduled 7 o'clock every night. I'm going to call up the thumbnail that I did. Day 2 is going to be tonight at 7. Please spread the word if you are enjoying it. I'm terrible with imposter syndrome. I never know whether people are going to like it or I'm just wasting my time or whatever. I'm not wasting my time because I enjoy playing the game anyway.
You'd be playing it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
And I like to think you'd be pretending to be Captain Dove, even if you weren't recording yourself.
I mean, you just know me too well, to be perfectly honest.
Office door is closed. You
Yeah, yeah.
just people standing outside here. Hello, shipmates.
That's right. Yeah, I've got a number of NPCs, and they help me through my general life. So yeah, any sort of comments on it? I just kind of mentioned it
Oh,
just briefly because we haven't got a game last night.
I I really enjoyed it. I mean, as we were talking just before going online, I can't play survival games, not for any other reason than I have a very short attention span. Um, but I do enjoy watching Andy play them. So when you used to play Conan and
Yeah.
things like that. So I Captain Dove is my favorite character, my favorite of Andy's NPCs. And I really enjoyed just hearing you interact with the NPCs and tell them to come along with you. And again, just
I'd like to
my
point out
favorite line.
it is actually quite difficult because none of the NPCs talk to
No,
you
they
at
don't
all.
talk.
It's
No,
just like,
no.
okay. I think it's because it's early access.
Mm.
And I think there's going to be more cinematics and things kind of added as it goes to release. But I wanted to play it early. But I'm having a ball, and if it's popular, if people like it, I might do others. I mentioned the Elden Ring one that I'm going to do anyway. I think
I'd really
because
like that.
I want to replay it so that I'm kind of ready for when the expansion comes out.
Just make sure you don't complete it.
Right.
If 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 the word on the street is to be believed,
Mm.
you want to make sure you've gotten to Moog's Palace.
Right. Okay. Very good. Very good. Nice
Because
to
that's probably where the DLC is
see
going to
it's going to
start.
start.
And
Right.
historically in the Soulsborne games, you go to the DLC by going to a specific location,
Yeah.
and that location transports you to the DLC.
Yeah.
So thinking is Moog's Palace. There's a certain thing in the
Yeah. Yeah.
Mogwin
Yeah. Yeah.
Dynasty
Yeah.
Palace.
Yeah.
That's what will take you to the DLC. Don't want to spoil it for anyone
No.
that
No.
hasn't
No.
played
No.
it.
No. No.
And for anyone that hasn't played it, well, give it a go.
Mm. And I'll be doing some plays and walkthroughs at some point. I'm also working on a few other ideas as well, if these kind of things are popular, alongside doing all of the role play stuff as well. Anyway, talking of role play stuff, we'll have a quick chat about tonight's game, and then we'll go into the questions that were asked of
Yes.
Discord. So, Vampire the Masquerade, which I will
Mm.
mention is going to be the next Tales of the Smoke one after tomorrow's Call of Cthulhu. I love this game. I love both tonight's game, but also Vampire the Masquerade
Yeah.
as a game. Christian's in it again. Do some chatting.
Well, I mean, it's been really interesting seeing all the threads come together because we've been playing this game for quite a while now, and we've had a lot of disparate things or things that felt disparate to start with, and now they're all starting to converge a little bit. And we're also still working on our characters. Our characters are developing. There's quite a lot of character stuff as well. So Dip, which is Elsa's character, Dip is opened a bar, and we've been kind of going through that and some of her backstory. Franziska, that's Rachel's character, has been helping with that. We've seen glimpses of kind of Gasper, Andrew's character's called backgrounds. And there's been some stuff going on with Francois, which is my character as well. But we're all really different characters, and the thing that I'm enjoying the most is seeing us as a coterie, because they're by rights we're none of us are the same. None of us are Camarilla. Oh, sorry. Some of us Camarilla, some of us are not Camarilla, and we've all kind of had to come together and be this coterie out of necessity. And we've just kind of stuck together because we found we're quite strong together. And yeah, it's been really fun sort of acting that out and seeing what the interplays between the different characters and all that sort of thing going on. It's been really, really, really fascinating.
Yeah.
And a heck of a lot of fun to play in, because I've not, before we did this game, I'd not played Vampire. So it was a slightly new system to me. I say slightly because I'd played Werewolf once before. But no, I mean, I really enjoy the world. It's all it is very real world based. I mean, as we're playing, Andy will say locations, and there'll be real world locations, which is great because it means you can look at them on a map and place it.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of having a good map, being able to say that's where we are there, that's where we are there, that's that sort of thing. It helps me put things in my head when we are doing theatre of the mind. But no, I mean, it's we're pulling at these threads to try and untangle a conspiracy that's potentially hundreds of years in the making, and it's absolutely fascinating. Skillgannon's just asked which edition of Vampire do we play? I don't know.
It's
That
the
version.
yeah, it's
Fifth,
the
isn't it?
latest.
Yeah.
I think it's fifth.
Yes.
I think it's called fifth. Elsa
Yes.
is and Andrew, if you're about, they know. But it's the latest edition. It's Modern
Yeah.
Knights. The reason why I chose that, it's the latest edition. I am pulling in backstory from some of the older lore and some of the stuff that fifth, or rather the latest edition, hasn't touched upon.
Mm.
I'm including as well, because it keeps it fresh, it keeps it interesting. In terms of big lore, um, some of that's in there. For instance, this is New York by night, so um, I chose New York as a setting because it's quite an interesting setting. The Sabbat held it to sort of the 90s or late 90s, and then it was taken over by the Camarilla. But in Kindred time, those 20 or so years is just a blink of an eye, you
Yeah.
know. So it's still tenuous. Um, there's a lot of politicking going on, obviously, behind, and I also like to include quite a lot of aspects of the world of darkness as well. The kindred have come across some changelings. Um, they've come across a mage, and I like the bigger world of darkness rather than just sort of concentrating upon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
It's nice to feel like because it does feel a bit like the other worlds are kind of pushed aside. I don't know that's deliberate because every individual world is
mm,
kind of we're well, everyone else is just a bit rubbish, aren't they? Like we're the best.
yeah,
But I like that we've touched there sort of on the periphery. There's been some werewolves. We haven't actually met them, and then on the periphery, there's we met the changelings. We met a mage, and yeah, it is fascinating. And I coming into this, the only knowledge I had of the world of darkness sort of was from the things that Rachel had told me about the game
yeah,
Bloodlines
yeah,
because I haven't played it, and so all this existing lore, all this new lore, it's all new to me,
yeah.
and it's fascinating. So I will say when I chose my character Francois, I chose a Toreador because that aligned closest to me. So yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
excellent.
one of my friends, actually, when I publicised one last score the other week, one of my friends says they run a vampire game and said, "Oh, when I said, oh, I'm in one too," and I bet you're a Toreador, and I said, "Yes, yes, I am."
No, it's great. I love it. I love it all really. It's going to be interesting to convert it to the smoke.
Hmm.
That is going to be fun to do. And Elsa's just confirmed that it is V5. It is the fifth. I thought it was. Um, I don't really pay much attention to editions. I tend to
Rules.
use and rules. I tend to use the most up to date ones because I love buying the books of
Yeah.
whatever rule system. I like supporting creators.
And
Um,
this version was a Kickstarter as well,
yeah,
because I've got again just behind me. I don't know if
yeah,
you can see it, but I've got the version that they did with the Kickstarter. So it came with the storyteller screen
yeah.
and a notebook that we can never use.
I know, I know, I know. So yeah, tonight's game. Thank you for covering all of that. I'm very excited. It's just an enjoyable experience to torment you. Vampires are a
Oh,
very
Francois
fun
gets a lot of
game.
torment.
I mean, they are supernatural creatures, top of the
Mm.
food chain. Well, in the mortal world, anyway.
Indeed.
Outside of that, into the world of darkness, it all changes, of course, where we all know werewolves are tougher than vampires, and
Ah, no, they're not. No, no, we're better than the puppies.
yeah, well, we'll see how that works out. But it's quite a nice sort of turnover that you've got these kindred that are technically very, very powerful, but they're terrified of everything. That paranoia of the kindred is really fun to sort of watch, and our players play it out wonderfully. Absolutely wonderfully. So, I mean, we spent a good 15 minutes talking about the launch of the Sons of the Forest and tonight's game. So let us go into the questions from Discord. Nothing too challenging, but interesting questions. Great for sort of comment. Okay, so which one would you like to cover first?
Ooh, let's do how do you deal with larger groups? So, yeah, in the Discord, we were asked dealing with larger player groups, sort of 7 or 8 players.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? And this is something I've had experience with, and I know you do as well, Andy, because I ran a group for 5 years with 7 people in,
Yeah.
and my advice is don't. but that's from a having done it for 5 years. I don't think I would want to personally run a group of that size again because it's difficult. And the problems I found was in encounter balancing, where you got seven people, and that's not just from a here's things that can challenge you point of view, which was a challenge. I
Mhm.
really struggled with that, but also from a giving everybody the space, because combat takes a long time. If you're doing, say, D&D, it takes a long time. So you need to, I mean, the first piece of advice I would give to running a larger group is make sure you've got a group that is happy with that size, and you've got role players that are happy to give give help to other people and work with other people. When you've got that group where everyone's aware of giving each other space, because that really helps. If you've got sort of, I can work with you, I can work with you. If you've got 7 people in the group and they say, right, we're going to split the party 7 ways. Oh God, no.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a challenge. The reason why it's a challenge is that most games are designed for 4, maybe 5 people. They can go up to any kind of number of players if you wanted to, but by adding more players, you change the feel at the table and uh, the maths behind the game. Now, some games don't have math because they're storytelling games, so it's a different dynamic for those type of games. But great advice initially anyway is that first and foremost, as we always say, make sure everybody is happy with those numbers and they're happy with the system that they're playing with those numbers. And systems are different. If you're playing 5th edition D&D, combat is slow and can be clunky. So you can help that along by ensuring that everybody knows when their turn is and perhaps signaling to them that their turn will be next. It's actually quite challenging, and GMs who say, "Well, you should know what you're doing before the start of your next turn because
Yeah,
combat is fluid
yeah.
and
You never know. Not always.
the battlefield can change just before your turn is about to go, and what you were trying to do or what you was focusing on is no longer applicable. The battlefield does change, um, but certainly with those kind of numbers, if you want to speed things up and everybody around the table wants to speed things up, um, sort of know what your character can do, knowing what your character what the spells, what the abilities, how they function, how they work, so that when you suddenly go, right, I want to cast Fireball, and you go, right, where do you want to cast it? I'm not quite sure. Where's the best place for me to
Mm,
cast it?
yeah,
Well, what's the radius or diameter of a fireball? I don't know. Um, it slows things down. Now, there's nothing wrong with people learning the game. There's nothing wrong with people not knowing all of that information. Some people don't have that kind of mind that can contain that kind of information.
I
They have
don't.
minds that contain other information. Um, but if you're running for a larger number of people and you don't want combat to be slow, everybody knowing what their character can do speeds things up
Yeah,
substantially. Telegraphing that it's going to be your turn next start thinking about what you do can speed combat up.
VTTs help with that because when we play in Fantasy Grounds, I always have the combat tracker open. When in Roll20, the moment I click to open the combat tracker, I know that everyone else can see that combat tracker. And that helps. I mean, if you're in person, people use bits of paper or like I know that some people have like cutouts and they put them in the place, or I always just used to write it down on. I had a wipeable battle map and I would write down the combat order there so everyone could kind of see when their character was doing things. I guess one of the questions I've got is how do you make sure everybody in a group of sort of 7, 8 people, 9 people even, how do you make sure that everyone's got some time to shine?
Well, I mean, that's a question. The first thing is knowing that you want to give people time to shine. So when you're aware that that is the intention, that during a 3-hour session you kind of want to make sure everybody has a piece of the cake or pie or whatever. And obviously, sort of, if you are pre-planning, you kind of know roughly what's going to happen, so you can make little notes, backstory notes, or whatever else. Sometimes it doesn't happen in a game. Making a note that next game you want to make sure that the player that didn't get a piece of the pie gets a piece of the pie. Um, it's supposed to be fun for everybody around the table, and it can be challenging as a GM when you get entertaining players that are entertaining. They're not necessarily domineering or just like the sound of their own voice. They're proactive. They are, as I say, entertaining everybody else, and everybody's having fun there. And you can, as a GM, be drawn to that kind of player, because when an NPC comes in and starts role playing, especially if as a GM you like the role playing aspect of it, they start role playing back at you. Um,
Yeah.
and you have to kind of stop your GM enjoyment of role playing to realize you're there to spread the story around. And you can, as the NPC, ask leading questions to some of the other players to try and bring them in. Or what you do is you create NPCs that will turn up at some point that they should be interested to sort of talking to.
Yeah.
And it's important, but equally there are some players that are either very, very shy, that they kind of want to be there, they kind of want to watch the story that's going on, they kind of want to roll the dice and get into combat, but they don't want to be necessarily put into the spotlight. And either having empathy for that or having a conversation with them, um, whether they want to slowly um, sort of dip their toes into that role playing water and gain their confidence with it, or whether they are happy just sitting back. But it's important to have all of these conversations. They don't have to be face to face. You can do it in Messenger or whatever. But sort of transparency around the table. Everybody's here to have a good time. Having these, I hate to say it, but adult conversations. How can we make this game better for everybody? Is always a question on my mind. Um, but I think one of the questions about it is, how do you balance for larger numbers, especially when the game is designed for 4 or 5 players.
Because you got to think, like, with sort of a standard party of 4 or 5, you could have a party where they decided to balance. You've got a healer, tank, DPS, sort of the standard stuff, or you could have a party, of sort of, well, we're all going to play very talky characters and see where that gets us, because that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
But when you've got so many, you actually you can have all the archetypes, and I don't just mean in D&D terms, but say Shadowrun, you could have a face, a rigger, a decker, a technomancer. You could have every base covered, so you effectively have a party that can do everything.
Yeah.
And yeah, how would you balance for that, where effectively you have every answer possible? You can't throw. It'd be difficult to throw a curveball at the party
Yeah.
without them being able to tackle it. So how would you throw curveballs? How would you surprise a group where they can do everything?
Yeah, it's interesting. There are quite a lot of things you have to do, but you have to break the rules.
Hmm. You break
Fundamentally,
the rules.
well,
You have to know them first.
you change what's going on. Uh, when you get more than four or five people at the table, the rules are broken
Yeah.
fundamentally. So it's no good looking at the rules that you've got because they're designed for that. You have to double up on it. Um, which means that you obviously increase the challenge ratings, the stats of the
Yeah.
creatures. That goes without doubt. You can still keep lower level sort of more minion type creatures in there because it's quite good
Hmm.
for players to do one shot kills and to do that. But for certain others, you kind of bump it up. So it might take one or two rounds to kill them rather than a single sort of player killing something that they shouldn't really be able to do. I mean, it refers back to open dice rolls that we basically said. Um, what I do is I think about the NPC or the monster, and I think about the set of players, their ranges, abilities, and skills, and I sort of play it through. I don't actually play it through, but I play it through in my mind of, well, so and so can do 60 hit points of damage in a single attack, whether it's a multi attack or whatever. So and so can cast fireball. So and so can do this. So and so can do this. So added together, I now know what this monster needs to
Yeah.
withstand, and then you make it withstand that, and a little bit more. Then it's a case of, um, and this is more of a challenging one. How do you slow down or make the players challenged? And it's easy to take a number of players out of a combat, but it's not necessarily the most fun thing to do
Yeah.
because suddenly they're not doing anything. I'm talking about paralyzation effects,
Yeah. Yeah.
banishment. There are quite a lot of mechanics, certainly in fifth edition, that allow you to remove players. And it's, well, okay, banishment, it might not work, but if you want it to work, you just make the saving throw that they need to do, you know, higher than they can actually do, or
Yeah.
not give them a fair chance. So you can do it. It's just it doesn't feel right to do it. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I
so
mean, I used banishment on Saturday on one of my players, and I felt really bad because
yeah,
it was a great spell to use for crowd control because I've
hmm
got 6 players in my
yeah,
game.
yeah,
But then I was like, oh no, they can't. They're actually they needed to be in this combat, so I was
hmm
very grateful when I failed the concentration check as the character, and the character came back. I think one of the techniques I used actually when I had 7 players was I used to add hit points on the fly. So because with the VTT, I tried doing public rolls, it didn't work. Um, that was a limitation on the system
yeah,
because I take creatures that are something else and reskin them.
hmm
And somewhere in the system, I must have kept the original name there. And the words mummy lord came out. And I was like, well, it's not a mummy lord, it's an assassin.
yeah,
But unfortunately, the players kind of twigged to what the creature really
yeah,
was. And I didn't like that. Um, but also, one of the things I like about the system I use is it doesn't tell my players how hit the enemy is. And I never tell my players,
hmm
they get a feel from me of how bloodied they are if they want, but I don't ever let them know. And I know Fantasy Grounds has the whole sort of heavy damage,
yeah,
whatever. But because I like that flexibility, because then I normally judge that first round of combat with because my players will either do really, really great and absolutely destroy something, or they'll do really badly. And sometimes I will adjust the HP,
hmm
based on that, because if I've put a couple of things in front of them and they've just steamrolled them, but it's been one level of combat, because I know my players enjoy combat that lasts a bit longer.
Mhm.
I sometimes do think, well, actually, I'll just throw an extra 100 hit points. I won't change the stat. I won't change their attack or
Yeah, yeah.
anything like that. I'll just change I will just change that little bit there, that little the HP.
I mean,
But sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no. I totally understand what you're saying. One way that you could rationalize that in terms of making it uh, a visible tell to your players and not have them thinking, oh well, he's bumping up the hit points, his healing potions,
Mm,
or magical items that
yeah,
heal. So as a bonus action, they heal up, they gain 100 hit points or 20 hit points or
yeah,
50 hit points. And if you stack that into the monster blocks, I mean, these items exist in the
mm,
game. Um, and most monsters don't use bonus actions because I mean, they have them, they must have them.
yeah.
But
It actually calls it out in a lot of monsters when they explicitly have them.
yeah, but I mean, that is possibly
Mm,
a quite a nice answer to
mm,
that solution that is an in character one.
yeah,
And obviously, you as a game master, I don't mean you as a game master, I mean game masters in
one
general.
as a game master. Yeah,
They get to decide if and when they want the creatures to take that healing.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, I
so
mean, going back to one of
yeah,
your earlier points, the thing I struggle with is I don't have a lick of strategy in me,
yeah,
and I rely heavily on. I mean, now I love the book. The monsters know what they're doing,
yeah,
and the blog. Um, and if I look at one of my characters' character sheets, I just can't piece together that this is how much damage they can do. It just doesn't come out of my brain. So which is why I always did it on the fly. So I would let the first round of combat happen and then think, right, I've given them this many, this is how much they've got in the thing. Maybe I should multiply it out with that, and then I stick with that number.
yeah,
Which is why I've always done it, semi on the fly. Sometimes it's absolutely perfect. I think that's fine, but
yeah,
sometimes just behind the scenes, I have to go. They need a little bit more to give my players, I said,
yeah, yeah,
a lot of my players are war gamers. They enjoy that combat aspect of it, and I've got some fantastic strategists in my group,
yeah,
and I can't play chess. I mean, I will be in checkmate quicker than anything else. If anyone wants to win a game of chess, play it against me, because I don't think those turns ahead. So I said I do rely on those books to
yeah,
help me. So actually, that might be a good one for the future. Actually, balancing
yeah,
encounters and techniques for the game master that might struggle, because again, I do really struggle with knowing what everything is and knowing what everything can do. That's why I like Blades in the Dark,
yeah,
because it was nice and simple. You describe what you can do, and then it's easy for me as a GM that struggles with interactions.
yeah,
It was why I was very bad at Magic the Gathering. I like playing it,
yeah.
but as you remember, I was quite often last in any tournament I was in.
Beautiful artwork and cards. No
Oh
one
yeah,
can.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. So I mean, that sort of answers the question a little bit. I mean, I was going to say as well, rather than taking the characters out of the combat, what you do is you do the thing that a lot of GMs don't like, and you split the party.
Yes.
So there is, at that climactic time, two things that need to be done at the same time. And what you can do is you have both combats happening at the same time, or both things happen at the same time. So you are in initiative through it, even though they are in two separate locations.
Okay. Yeah.
And then you just run down the initiative. So everybody's in the game, but you've got two things going on.
Hmm.
And you've got a 4 and a 3 then, and therefore the math should work
Yeah.
out for both
Yeah,
groups
yeah, yeah, it
perfectly.
works quite well. I mean
So,
that sorry, go
yeah, no. I was just repeating myself.
on. I guess kind of one of the follow-up questions, which is sort of tangentially related to
Hmm.
that then. And it's more something I'd like to know your opinion on really, is running sub not sub combats, but broken party combats where effectively you as a GM you plan some encounters, and one of the encounters is basically going to be a combat. You know it's going to inevitably be a combat. So how do you deal with that when the party's split and you've got maybe say a party of 6 or party of 5, 2 or 3 of them have gone off to do something, and that is now involving a combat? How do you balance that with the rest of the party that isn't in that combat?
I normally, if you say the party have split and they shouldn't have split,
Not that they shouldn't, but like but actually probably they shouldn't have split because
yeah,
maybe it is a dangerous location.
what I
How
tend
do you tell
to
it?
is advanced story tell that,
Mm,
and it happens, um, and they suffer the consequences of them happening.
yes.
I don't really balance it. I try, especially online. It's incredibly difficult to communicate, but I always try and communicate the things that the characters should have learned on their journey. And I mean, the perfect example was collateral damage a couple of sessions ago when
Mhm.
Adran the mage decided to go on a solo adventure. The
Ah,
collateral
yeah,
damage group were absolutely fine with that. They were doing their other things. Unfortunately for Adran, the bulk of the group caught up with him and helped him out. But had he, I mean, there was foretelling and signalling. The gargoyle had taken this robe of the magi, this
yeah,
legendary item from this mage. He'd pulled miners into the walls that were paralyzed. Um, Everybody was terrified of the gargoyle, whatever it was. And he did a lot of investigation, a lot of really cool role playing, finding out all of this information. Still decided to go by themselves. It was only last minute with some sendings that he decided to sort of wait. We could have lost a player.
yeah.
We could have
Character.
lost a character. Might have lost a player as well. He might have gone, I'm out. But um, I like open dice rolls. I play fair. I try and communicate the threat and the danger levels of what's
Yeah,
going on. Um, and I do that reversely as well. There are times where the information seems to lead you can split the party. Not that you need to sort of
yeah,
gaggle together as a huddle and not leave each other's sight for the entire campaign. Um, but I try my best to communicate what the characters are aware of.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think that is the only way to do it, is be honest. And if it's lucky, I mean, it is down to that GM going, are you really sure you want to do this?
Are
You
you
know,
sure? This is
um,
your third. Are you sure? Are you sure you wish to ride this Umber Hulk into this giant black hole where you know there's an eldritch creature
yeah.
down there? That was an actual question I asked one of my players 3 times, and he went, "Yeah, sounds like fun." Does it sound like fun? Because
Well, I
you're
mean,
you're you're going to lose your character. I'm
yeah, yeah.
telling you now, you're going to lose your character.
I mean, you can only be as transparent as that.
Yes.
Um, you know, um, but I feel I've done my I've done my bit as a
Mm,
storyteller and a GM, trying to telegraph and signal all of that, and then we let the story play out. I'm very keen on letting the story play out,
yes. Yeah.
um, rather than fudging dice. And I mean, like, or if the players are aware that there are no consequences to their actions,
Mm,
that this mage could have gone down there and he should have died by all rights, but you then have gone, oh, okay, well, you've won. Um,
yeah.
it sends, I think, a dangerous message that
Yes. Yeah.
there are no repercussions to
No.
the world.
No.
Um, or even worse, it can create like, well, you let him win, why aren't you going to let me win now, sort of thing,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so yeah, simple answer to that is that we try and tell a good story, we try and communicate the information they need to make these decisions, but once those decisions are made, all
They're
gloves are
made.
off. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
take no pleasure in character death, absolutely not. um, Very few characters die in my games.
Yeah.
Although tomorrow night, Call of Cthulhu, who knows? Um,
And Mork Borg,
yeah, yeah,
actually,
Mockball.
I would say I kind of wish we had lost a character when we played
Yeah,
Mork Borg
I didn't know
previously
the
because that would have
system
been
very
great.
well. I didn't know the system very
My,
well.
and my character was a tank.
Yeah, yeah,
He just couldn't die. He couldn't do much damage, but he couldn't die. So yes, he had more than the one hit point that you get.
yeah. Um, so I think that has covered it, certainly with that number
Hmm.
of players. I mean, it hasn't covered it. There are
No,
so
well,
many so many ifs and buts. What system are you playing? Do all the characters, are they happy to sit and watch other people role play?
hmm.
Do they get pleasure out of watching that? Kind of like watching a live stream.
What's the largest group you've DM'd for, just out of interest?
Back in the shop, we used to do a Wednesday daytime crazy drop in and play game, and that was, I think we got to 15, 16 players.
Wow.
It was mainly,
Wow.
it was Dungeon of the Mad Mage before Dungeon of the Mad Mage
Hmm.
came out. I was using the second edition version of it.
Ah,
This
okay.
was this was with fifth edition rules.
Yeah.
They just hadn't released Dungeon of the Mad
Yeah.
Mage at that point. Um, but everybody around the table knew what they were getting themselves into. It was a
Yeah.
it was a free fun session of dropping in, spending 3 hours, kind of chilling with friends, battling monsters and the like. And uh, as long as everybody at the table is having fun, and
Yeah.
they you well. Captain Dove might be able to manipulate time, but me as a GM can't. So, it takes time to play your turns out.
One
Don't.
round of combat for
Yeah, yeah.
3 hours with
Yeah,
15 of you.
yeah, but everybody was there for that. They they,
Yeah.
they, they fundamentally wanted to do it, and there are little things like, as I said, ensuring you telegraph who's going to go next,
Yeah.
and all of those kind of things. You can still have fun. It's a different experience, a very different experience,
Yeah.
um, but sometimes it's a fun experience. Um, so yeah, so. The thing as a GM is, don't get stressed by it. If you're getting stressed by it, you're obviously running for the wrong number.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fundamentally,
I won't run for
yeah,
7
yeah.
again.
If you're not
Six
enjoying
is
it,
max. Yeah.
if the table dynamics are wrong, and
Mm.
you have to have these adult conversations of, I don't feel comfortable running. I'm not enjoying the experience. And as a GM, you are a player as well,
Mhm.
um, and you
Yeah.
need to be enjoying it as well.
Yeah.
And
I think that's one of the biggest things. Make sure you remember your GM is a player.
yeah, apart from me, of course, when you're paying me hard, cold cash.
But you're still
Uh,
a player though. And as I've said before, the best sessions, the very best sessions have been the ones where you've seen like you've enjoyed yourself. Because regardless of whether or not, you do this for money, having you enjoy yourself in a session, knowing that you, Andy, enjoy
yeah,
yourself when we're playing D&D or Vampire or whatever, it makes the session better for all of us because we're
yeah.
all enjoying it.
No, I'm quite easy to please, to be perfectly honest. I'm very
Yeah.
blessed and enjoy playing games, so I'm incredibly lucky, and I love everything I do. So it's good, but it's having the right mindset as well. When you go to run Dungeon of the Mad Mage, it's a mega dungeon. You
Yeah.
can't expect to come away with the buzz of high end sort of role playing.
Yeah.
Although there was some
Yeah.
good role playing in the previous game, but that is just an example of a dungeon. Whereas if you're playing, Blades in the Dark
Yeah.
or
You get
Vampire,
different things
yeah,
out
yeah.
of it.
But you have to enter that game with the expectations of the game that you're running, rather than oh, maybe this big combat that we're about to do for fifth edition is going to turn into some kind of, Jane Austen novel. No, it's not, because you're running a combat. Enjoy the combat,
Yeah,
enjoy it for what it is, and you won't go away disappointed. Um,
wonderful. Well, we're at quarter two.
yes, we're getting ready for Vampire. So
Ooh,
apologies to the other. Oh, I like what you've done there with the lights. That is
getting
good.
ready for vampire.
Yeah. Apologies to the other questions, Ian and John's, but we will come to them probably. I'll chat about them on Friday, um, which are interesting ones. They're about um, sort of ready-made adventures, sort of versus homebrew, but also how to convert ready-made adventures to other systems, and about Curse of Strahd, advice on running it as well. Um, Two things very close to my heart, and I'm more than happy to sort of chat about them. Um, so we'll just do a quick outro, really, which is Captain Dove at 7 o'clock tonight versus Sons of the Forest Day 2.
Looking forward to it
Watch
tomorrow.
that if you can, or on catch up. Tomorrow, 6 o'clock club, Christian will be here, and we'll be chatting about Tales from the Smoke, and the Call of Cthulhu game that will be
I have
running
questions,
at
and
seven
you must
o'clock.
answer them.
I'm more than happy to. We'll call up that Tales from the Smoke, Call of Cthulhu. Myself as the keeper. Jocelyn is playing the widow, Ian the butler, and Dave the guide. On YouTube tomorrow, 8th of March 2023. Starting at 7. So I am very excited. Please put that into the diaries. If you haven't already, give us a like and a subscribe. It really, really does help us out. And me and Christian will be seeing you tomorrow night at 6 o'clock for the 6 o'clock club. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. Have a good evening. Bye from me.
Bye, everyone. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.